Hi, this is Marty from Photoshop Art House. Today, I'll show you two simple methods to easily add depth to photos with infinite focal length and even add haze. Both methods can be accessed in the regular version of Photoshop, and each contains at least one feature that the other doesn't have. Open a photo with a wide depth of field. For the first method, go to Filter and Neural Filters. If depth blur isn't active, just toggle it on. It's currently in beta, but as I mentioned, it's also accessible in the regular version of Photoshop. Since it downloads from the cloud, it'll take a few seconds to process. Because I want the foreground to be in focus, I'll click on it. If we enable Output Depth Map only, we can see how Photoshop perceives distance. Darker areas are closer, and brighter areas are farther away. I'll uncheck it to deactivate it. By dragging the focal point to the background, it makes the foreground blurred and the background in focus. I'll drag the focal point back to the foreground. We can increase the focal range, which widens the depth of field, meaning a broader area stays in focus. Conversely, dragging the focal range to 0 gives us the narrowest depth of field. We can adjust the blur strength and even add haze if we want. I'll press Ctrl or Command Z to undo the last step. We can also adjust the temperature, the tint, the saturation, the brightness, and grain. The second method for creating depth is inside the Camera Raw filter. Before we use this filter, we'll convert our image into a smart object so we can modify it non-destructively. We didn't have to do this using the Neural filter because it did the effect on a separate layer. Click the icon at the upper right of the Layers panel and click Convert to Smart Object. Go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. Under Lens Blur, check Apply. We can see it processing next to it as a gray ring fills with a blue color. Camera Raw is using AI to automatically detect the subject and add a blur to the background. With the blur slider, we can increase or decrease the amount of blur. We can adjust the focus range by dragging either edge of the rectangle to contract or expand it, or by repositioning the rectangle. If we want to manually override it to blur a different area, we can select the Area Focus icon. When we click an area of the image, that area will become in focus. I'll click back on the Area Focus icon and click the cactus, which will make it and the foreground in focus. To see an overlay of the AI-generated depth map, we can enable Visualize Depth. The color overlay of the image corresponds to the colors in the focal range bar. The areas that are in focus are displayed in white or light yellow, while oranges and purples are in the mid-range areas, and dark gray and black represent areas that will be the most blurred. I'll uncheck it. We can also add one of 5 bokeh effects to the image to make the blur look more natural. The different bokeh shapes refer to the particular type of camera lens. We can use the Boost slider to increase or decrease the effect. To manually define the depth map, under Refinement, we can add focus or blur to areas. We can adjust the amount of focus or blur, the brush size, the feather or softness of the brush, and the flow, which is the speed at which the brush applies the adjustment. This is Marty from Photoshop Art House. Thanks for watching, and remember, Be safe and be kind. See you next time.